Commander Wrath stared through the massive viewport of the Zephyrian flagship, Horizon's Light, at the once pristine world of Kepler 442b, the planet's jade oceans and emerald forests, home to his people for 3 generations, now bore the telltale black scars of Vex infestation. From orbit, the spreading darkness resembled a malignant growth, consuming everything in its path with methodical indifference. "The eastern continent has fallen," reported Nyx, his second in command. Her voice betrayed the fear they all felt, but dared not express openly. "Civilian evacuation is at 26%. The Vex have accelerated their consumption patterns by 34% since yesterday." Wrath's 4-fingered hand clenched into a fist. "And our defenses?" "Holding, but barely. The orbital platforms can't maintain this pace of engagement. We've lost 6 more interceptors in the last hour alone. Their vessels, designed for peaceful exploration and scientific study, had been hastily retrofitted with weapon systems that were proving woefully inadequate against the Vex threat. The enemy wasn't a traditional military force, but a nightmarish biological entity that consumed and replicated with terrifying efficiency. The first spores had arrived via an asteroid impact 3 months ago. By the time the Zephyrians understood what they were facing, the Vex had already established a foothold. "The evacuation will take weeks at this rate," Wrath said, his silver eyes reflecting the burning cities below. "We don't have weeks." "Commander!" called the communications officer, her antennae twitching with excitement. "We're receiving a response to our distress call." Hope, fragile but insistent, blossomed in Wrath's chest. The Zephyrians were among the youngest members of the Galactic Consortium, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 60 years prior. Their connections with other spacefaring civilizations were limited but cordial. When the Vex invasion began, they had broadcast emergency signals on all frequencies, begging for medical assistance and evacuation support. "Put it through," Wrath ordered, straightening his posture. The holographic display flickered to life, displaying a simple text message: "Distress signal received. Terran Federation responding. ETA 18 standard hours." "Terrans," Nyx whispered, her brow furrowed. "Earth. But they're not even full consortium members yet." Wrath had only vague knowledge of the humans. Their civilization had achieved interstellar travel more recently than even the Zephyrians, but they had rapidly expanded their presence in neighboring systems. Reports suggested they were a curious blend of merchants, diplomats, and soldiers, their ships equipped for all 3 functions. Most importantly, they were known to maintain an extensive medical fleet. "They're close enough to reach us quickly," Wrath replied. "Any help is welcome at this point." He turned to his crew, newfound determination in his voice. "Redouble evacuation efforts. We need to prepare landing zones for the Terran medical ships and coordinate triage protocols." For the first time in weeks, the command deck buzzed with purposeful energy. Perhaps they would survive this catastrophe after all. 18 hours later, the sensors pinged an alert. Multiple objects had emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. "The Terrans have arrived," announced the sensor officer. "Reading multiple vessels approaching our position." "Open a channel to welcome them," Wrath instructed, "and prepare to transmit coordinates for—" He stopped mid-sentence as the tactical display updated. These weren't medical ships. The approaching formation consisted of sleek, angular vessels bristling with weapon systems. At their center loomed a massive warship that dwarfed even the largest Zephyrian vessel. "Commander," the sensor officer's voice quavered, "I'm detecting high-energy weapon systems, missile platforms, and— Sir, the largest vessel appears to be carrying nuclear ordnance." A hushed silence fell over the command deck. Nuclear weapons were explicitly forbidden by consortium treaties. No civilized species had deployed such destructive force in centuries. "There must be some mistake," Wrath murmured. "We requested medical aid." The communications console chimed. Incoming transmission from the Terran fleet. The main screen displayed a human male in a dark uniform adorned with gold insignia. His face was weathered, his expression impassive. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Federation Battle Group 7. We are responding to your distress call regarding a Vex infestation. Please clear all Zephyrian vessels from the primary orbital lanes and transmit tactical data on enemy positions." Wrath stepped forward. "Admiral, I am Commander Wrath of the Zephyrian Defense Force. We appreciate your prompt response, but there seems to be a misunderstanding. We requested medical assistance and evacuation support." The human's expression didn't change. "Commander, the Terran Federation has extensive experience with Vex infestations. Medical assistance would be pointless at this stage. We are here to eradicate the threat." "But our people will be protected," Kane interrupted firmly. "But I need your cooperation to minimize casualties. My tactical officers will coordinate with yours." Kane out. The screen went dark, leaving the Zephyrian command crew staring at each other in confusion and alarm. "They can't be serious," Nix said. "They intend to wage war on our homeworld?" Wrath studied the tactical display, watching as the Terran vessels arranged themselves in a precise formation above Kepler 442b. Whatever their intentions, the humans had arrived with overwhelming force. His people had little choice but to cooperate. "Transmit the requested tactical data," he ordered reluctantly, "and move our ships to these coordinates to maintain a defensive perimeter around the evacuation centers." The next 6 hours were a blur of activity as the Terran fleet deployed into position. Smaller vessels, fighters by their appearance, swarmed from the larger ships, establishing a complex orbital defense grid. Transport ships descended into the atmosphere, landing at strategic points around the planet. "Commander," reported the sensor officer, "the Terran transports appear to be deploying ground forces, not medical personnel." "Ground forces?" Wrath repeated incredulously. "How many?" "Initial estimates suggest 50,000 troops, with heavy armor and air support." Nix gasped. "That's an invasion force!" Before Wrath could respond, the tactical display lit up with new alerts. The Vex had detected the Terran deployment and were redirecting their forces to attack the landing zones. Black masses surged toward the human positions like a tide of living darkness. "The Vex are engaging the Terran ground forces," announced the tactical officer. "Massive concentrations moving toward their landing zones." "Put it on screen," Wrath ordered. The main display showed aerial footage of the Terran deployment. Armored vehicles formed defensive perimeters around dropships still disgorging troops. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, establishing firing positions and deploying what appeared to be heavy artillery. When the Vex attack came, it was like watching a black wave crash against a steel shore. The creatures, ranging from dog-sized infiltrators to massive tank-like behemoths, surged forward in their thousands. And the Terrans opened fire. The coordinated barrage of energy weapons, ballistic projectiles, and precision-guided munitions tore through the Vex ranks with devastating effect. Where Zephyrian weapons had struggled to damage the creature's adaptive biology, the human arsenal seemed specifically designed to counter their regenerative capabilities. "They're weapons," Nix whispered. "They're actually effective." Wrath nodded slowly, a realization dawning. They fought these things before. The battle on the ground was mirrored in orbit as Vex bioships rose from hidden nests to challenge the human fleet. The response was equally devastating. Terran vessels executed complex maneuvers that no Zephyrian captain would have attempted, bringing their weapons to bear with surgical precision. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Kane," announced the communications officer. The human's face appeared on screen again, now showing signs of tension. "Commander Wrath, we've identified the primary Vex hive node in your southern hemisphere. We intend to neutralize it with a tactical strike." "What kind of tactical strike?" Wrath asked, suddenly apprehensive. "The kind that ends this infestation permanently." Kane replied, "I recommend you evacuate any remaining Zephyrian forces within a 200-kilometer radius of these coordinates." A map appeared, highlighting a region already heavily infested with Vex structures. "That's the heart of the infestation," Nix confirmed. "But a conventional bombardment would take days to penetrate their defenses." "I don't believe they're planning a conventional bombardment," Wrath said quietly. The massive Terran flagship, identified in their communications as the Hammer of Sol, was moving into position above the target area. Its lower hull was opening to reveal what could only be described as a massive energy weapon. "Admiral," Wrath said urgently, "what exactly are you planning to deploy?" "A plasma lance," Kane answered, matter-of-factly. "It will eliminate the Vex central node and disrupt their hive mind. Once their coordination is broken, our ground forces can eliminate the remaining threats." Nix moved to Wrath's side, lowering her voice. "Plasma weapons of that scale are banned under consortium regulations. The environmental damage alone will be far less than allowing the Vex to consume your entire world." Kane interrupted, his enhanced hearing apparently picking up her comment. "Commander, I understand your concern, but we have experience with these creatures. Conventional methods will fail. You have 1 hour to evacuate any remaining personnel from the target zone." The transmission ended abruptly. "He can't be serious," Nix said. "They're going to bombard our world with a weapon of mass destruction?" Wrath stared at the tactical display, watching as the human fleet continued to engage the Vex forces with ruthless efficiency. Their ground troops were advancing methodically, securing territory and establishing forward operating bases. It was a level of military coordination that the peace-loving Zephyrians had never developed. "I believe they are very serious," he replied softly. "And I'm beginning to think they may be right." The next hour passed in tense silence as the Zephyrians scrambled to confirm that no civilians remained in the target zone. The area had been one of the first to fall to the Vex, and preliminary scans showed no signs of surviving Zephyrian life forms. "The Terran flagship is powering its main weapon," reported the sensor officer. "Energy readings are unprecedented." On the main screen, they watched as the Hammer of Sol aligned itself precisely over the heart of the Vex infestation. A brilliant blue-white light began to coalesce at the tip of the exposed weapon. "All hands, brace for potential electromagnetic pulse," Wrath ordered, following a terse warning from the Terran command ship. The light intensified until it was painful to look at, even through the filtered screen. Then, in a single concentrated beam, it lanced down through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. For the Vex, where the beam struck, their structures simply disintegrated. The energy spread outward in a controlled pattern, following the networked architecture of the Vex hive mind. Within seconds, the entire central node was engulfed in searing plasma that burned hot enough to break molecular bonds. The sensor readings went wild, then stabilized as the beam cut off. Where the Vex fortress had stood was now a perfectly circular crater of glass-smooth surface, still glowing with residual heat. "Vex biosignatures in the target zone, 0, reported the sensor officer in disbelief. "The central node has been completely eradicated. On the tactical displays, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Vex forces across the planet suddenly lost coordination. Some creatures froze in place, others began attacking each other in confusion. The synchronized assault patterns dissolved into chaos. "The hive mind is disrupted," Nyx said, astonishment evident in her voice. "They actually did it." Another transmission came through from Admiral Kane. "Phase 1 complete. Moving to Phase 2. Ground clearance. We'll need your local knowledge. Commander, have your officers coordinate with Colonel Mason's ground forces to prioritize civilian extraction zones." Wrath found himself nodding. "Understood. Admiral, we'll provide full cooperation." Over the next 72 hours, the Terran military machine demonstrated why humans had earned both respect and wariness from other consortium species. Their ground forces moved with relentless purpose, eliminating confused and disorganized Vex clusters with minimal casualties. Orbital strikes targeted larger concentrations with precision that left surrounding infrastructure largely intact. More surprising was what happened after each area was secured. Terran medical teams moved in immediately behind the combat units, establishing field hospitals and treatment centers for injured Zephyrians. Engineers deployed temporary shelter systems and began restoring critical infrastructure. From the Horizon's Light, Wrath coordinated with both the Terran command structure and his own people on the ground. Mayor Lux, the highest-ranking civilian official to survive the initial Vex assault, served as liaison between the Zephyrian population and the human forces. "They're not what I expected," Lux admitted during one communication. "Efficient in battle, yes, but equally committed to saving lives afterward. Their medical technology is remarkable." Wrath had seen this for himself. Human doctors worked tirelessly alongside Zephyrian healers, adapting their techniques to an alien physiology with impressive speed. Their combat medics risked their lives to extract civilians from dangerous areas, and their engineers were already helping to develop plans for long-term decontamination of Vex-affected regions. 5 days after their arrival, Admiral Kane requested a face-to-face meeting on the surface. Wrath traveled to the main Terran forward operating base, accompanied by Nyx and Mayor Lux. The human installation was a model of military precision, orderly, secure, and purposeful. Armed soldiers moved with disciplined ease among civilian specialists. Aircraft departed and arrived on precise schedules. The entire operation hummed with coordinated efficiency. Admiral Kane met them in a prefabricated command center, in person. He was taller than Wrath had expected, with a physical presence that commanded attention without effort. "Commander, Mayor." He greeted them with a formal nod. "I'm pleased to report that the Vex threat has been neutralized. Remaining biological material is being systematically eliminated, and we've established a perimeter around the impact zone until radiation levels subside." "Admiral," Wrath began, struggling to find the right words. "My people owe you a debt we cannot repay. But I must ask, why did you respond to our distress call with such overwhelming force?" Kane's expression softened slightly. "Because anything less would have been insufficient. The Terran Federation encountered the Vex 3 years ago in the Proxima Centauri system. We learned the hard way that conventional responses fail against their adaptive biology. We lost an entire colony before we developed effective countermeasures." He gestured to a holographic display showing the remaining Vex concentrations being systematically eliminated by Terran forces. "When we received your distress call, our analysts immediately recognized the pattern of infestation from your transmitted data. We knew exactly what you were facing and what would be required to stop it." "Ginny, but the weapons you used," Nyx interjected. "The plasma lance, nuclear ordnance in orbit. These violate consortium treaties. Kane turned his steady gaze to her. They do. And we will answer for that violation to the Consortium Council. But we made a calculation. Better to ask forgiveness for breaking protocol than to watch another world fall to the Vex while following diplomatic niceties. Mayor Lux stepped forward. My people don't understand why beings from another star would risk so much for strangers. Because we remember being alone. Came a new voice. A human female in a battle-worn uniform entered the room. Colonel Mason, the ground force commander, had the bearing of someone who had seen too many battlefields. Her face carried scars that even advanced medicine had not completely erased. Humanity spent thousands of years believing we were alone in the universe. Mason continued. When we finally reached the stars and found other intelligent life, we made a promise to ourselves. Never again would a sentient species face extinction if we could prevent it. An admirable sentiment, Wrath acknowledged. But the force you brought, it wasn't just a rescue mission. It was an armada. Humanity has learned that sometimes compassion requires strength. Kane said, simply. We could have sent medical ships, as you requested. They would have arrived in time to comfort the dying, but not to save your world. He manipulated the holographic display, showing a simulation of the Vex spread pattern. Without military intervention, Kepler 442b would have been completely consumed within 14 days. Your entire species would be reduced to whatever evacuation ships managed to escape. The simulation was chillingly precise, matching exactly the acceleration patterns the Zephyrians had observed. Instead, Mason added, your casualties are under 12% of the population. Habitat damage is severe but concentrated in regions that can be quarantined and eventually restored. Your civilization will recover. Wrath felt a profound shift in his understanding. The Zephyrians had always prioritized peaceful exploration and scientific advancement. Their defense forces were designed primarily to handle pirates and natural disasters, not existential threats. They had viewed the Terrans' military focus with quiet disapproval, a vestige of a less enlightened approach to interstellar relations. Now he saw something different. The humans had developed their military capabilities not despite their compassion, but because of it. They had come prepared for war not because they sought conflict, but because they understood what was necessary to preserve life. Wow. What happens now? Mayor Lux asked. Phase 3, Kane replied. Reconstruction. We've already requested additional support from the Terran Federation, engineering corps, agricultural specialists, environmental remediation teams. The Vex left biological contaminants that must be neutralized before certain areas can be safely re-inhabited. And in return? Wrath asked cautiously. What does Earth want from Kepler? Kane seemed surprised by the question. An alliance, naturally. Mutual defense. Knowledge sharing. The Vex aren't the only threat in this sector, and humanity believes in strength through cooperation. Not territorial concessions, resource rights. Mason actually laughed, a short, harsh sound. Commander, if we wanted your resources, we wouldn't have spent blood and treasure saving your people. There are easier ways to acquire material wealth. Humanity's history taught us that empires based on exploitation ultimately fail. Kane added, true security comes from having strong allies who stand with you by choice, not coercion. The meeting continued for hours as they discussed immediate needs and long-term recovery plans. By the time Wrath returned to the horizon's light, his perspective had fundamentally changed. They're warriors, he told Nix as they observed the ongoing Terran operations from orbit. But not as we feared. Their methods are still troubling. she replied. The environmental damage from their weapons will take decades to heal. And yet our people will live to see that healing. Wrath countered softly. Would you prefer the alternative? In the weeks that followed, the truth of Admiral Kane's words was demonstrated repeatedly. Additional Terran ships arrived, not warships this time, but massive engineering vessels, environmental restoration platforms, and medical facilities. Human specialists worked alongside Zephyrian experts to develop decontamination protocols specifically tailored to their world's unique biology. The Terran military presence remained, but its focus shifted. Soldiers became security for reconstruction efforts. Warships patrolled the system against any potential threat, while civilian vessels brought supplies and specialists. 3 months after the initial Terran arrival, a formal alliance was signed between the Zephyrian leadership and representatives of the Terran Federation. The document acknowledged the shared sacrifice in defending Kepler 442b and established protocols for mutual defense, scientific exchange, and trade. At the signing ceremony, Wrath found himself standing beside Admiral Kane, watching as their respective leaders formalize the agreement. Your people are recovering remarkably quickly, Kane observed. Adaptability seems to be a trait our species share, along with stubbornness. Wrath replied with newly developed appreciation for human humor. Though I believe your kind may exceed us in that regard. Kane's lips quirked in what Wrath had come to recognize as a smile. A necessary trait for survival. I've been studying your history. Wrath admitted. Your wars, your conflicts. I thought I understood why humans developed such military capacity. I was wrong. Oh? I believed it was fear or aggression that drove Earth to build weapons like the plasma lance. But it was something else entirely. Wasn't it? Kane looked out over the gathering, where humans and Zephyrians mingled freely. What do you think it was? A responsibility. Wrath said simply. You built the capability to destroy because you understood that, sometimes, preservation requires it. An insightful observation, Kane acknowledged. Humanity's darkest moments taught us that peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice and security. We learned that being unwilling to fight when necessary doesn't make one peaceful. It makes one vulnerable. He turned to face Wrath directly. The consortium has existed in relative harmony for centuries, protected by treaties and mutual interests. But beyond its borders lie threats it has not yet confronted. The Vex are merely one example. And humanity stands ready to confront these threats. Wrath concluded, even at great cost to yourselves. We do what is necessary. Kane said, not because we love war, but because we love what we protect. As the ceremony concluded, Wrath found Mayor Lux speaking with Colonel Mason near a viewport overlooking the reconstruction of the capital city. New buildings rose among the ruins, designed with a blend of Zephyrian aesthetics and Terran engineering. Colonel Mason was explaining their rehabilitation program for the southern continent, Lux said as Wrath approached. They've developed a biological countermeasure to neutralize remaining Vex spores. Based on our experience in Proxima Centauri, Mason explained. The process requires time, but it's thorough. Within 5 years, those regions should be safe for resettlement. 5 years to undo damage that would have otherwise been permanent. Wrath noted. A remarkable achievement. Humanity has considerable experience with environmental restoration. Mason replied with a hint of sadness. We've made our share of mistakes with our own world. Yet you learned from them. Lux observed. Perhaps that is the greatest strength of your species, not your weapons or technology, but your capacity to evolve your thinking. A trait we share, Mason said, inclining her head respectfully. Your scientists have already improved our decontamination protocols by 30%. As night fell over the recovering world, Wrath found himself alone on an observation platform, gazing up at the stars. Among them, he knew. The Hammer of Sol maintained its vigilant orbit, a symbol of both destruction and preservation. A presence joined him, Admiral Kane, his uniform exchanged for simpler attire. Your people have a saying, Wrath said without preamble. Si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Kane translated. An ancient wisdom, often misunderstood. We Zephyrians believed that preparing for war inevitably led to it. Wrath admitted. We thought the path to peace was to focus solely on peaceful pursuits. A noble ideal, but an incomplete one. Wrath continued. When the Vex came, our peaceful intentions meant nothing. We had no defenses worthy of the name, no weapons that could halt their advance. Our commitment to peace nearly cost us everything. Kane was silent for a long moment. There is wisdom in your approach, too. Commander, humanity's history is scarred by those who prepared for war and then found reasons to wage it. The balance is elusive. Perhaps that is why our species needed to find each other. Wrath suggested, to learn from our different paths. Perhaps. They stood in companionable silence, watching as lights flickered on across the recovering city, life continuing, adapting, rebuilding. The Consortium Council has requested a formal explanation of our intervention, Kane said, eventually. Some members are concerned about the precedent of using forbidden weapons, even against the Vex. I will speak on behalf of the Terran Federation. Wrath promised. My people know what would have happened without your intervention. Thank you, but the larger question remains unanswered. How will the Consortium respond to threats that cannot be negotiated with? The Vex are not the only non-diplomatic entity in our galaxy. Wrath considered this. The Zephyrians had joined the Consortium seeking knowledge and cultural exchange. The idea that membership might one day require military action had never occurred to them. Perhaps, he said slowly, the Terran-Zephyrian alliance can offer a new model, one that balances the Consortium's diplomatic ideals with humanity's pragmatic preparedness. An interesting proposition, Kane acknowledged, though not all Consortium members will welcome it. Those who have never faced extinction may not understand the necessity. Wrath agreed. Until they do. Let us hope they never need to learn as your people have, Kane said softly. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and gold, Wrath reflected on the strange paradox the humans had taught him. Their greatest expression of compassion had come in the form of overwhelming military force. Their commitment to life had manifested as a willingness to wield weapons of terrible destruction. Yet he could not deny the truth before him. His world was healing. His people were safe. And beside them stood allies who had crossed the stars not for conquest or gain, but because they believed that no sentient species should face annihilation alone. It was a philosophy the Zephyrians had never considered, that sometimes true humanitarian action required the capability and will to destroy. That peace was not merely the absence of weapons, but their proper application in defense of life. As the new day illuminated the recovering landscape of Kepler 442b, Wrath made a silent promise. His people would remember this lesson. They would rebuild not just their cities, but their understanding of what it meant to be truly civilized. They would learn from Earth's example that compassion without strength was merely sentiment, and strength without compassion was merely violence. Between these two principles lay a path forward, one that the Zephyrians and Terrans would walk together.